Hi, I'm Hannah Nepilova, an integrative counsellor, and welcome to Therapy Chats, the podcast where I talk to specialists from different fields of mental health. Today, I'm talking to the counsellor Pauline Andrew about the use of creative interventions in the therapy room. As director of Deep Release, an organisation that is devoted to bringing psychotherapeutic theory alive in a way that is easy to understand, Pauline weaves creativity into her practice, often working with nesting dolls, pictures, and other artistic interventions. I'm here today to focus on her use of fairy tales as a therapeutic tool. I am fascinated by using fairy tales as a therapeutic tool because obviously fairy tales have a lot of metaphorical significance.
Yeah.
And what is nice about them is that they're so simple that they lay themselves open to interpretation. You can sort of map your life onto them quite easily. So, I mean, these are the first thoughts that come to my mind when I think about fairy tales. But I guess I want to ask you why do you think that they work so well as a therapeutic tool?
I think fairy tales have got so many, what I would describe as configurations of who we are. We have, and you've got to kind of forget what the gender issues are because we have our own heroic prince, we've got our own distressed damsel, we've got our own wicked witch, are all actually potentially either actual parts of us we like or our shadow self or things like that. And as the story unfolds, you've got a very basic storyline. Sad person needs help. Wicked witch has put them in some difficult situation. Heroic person comes along, rescues them, happy ending. I mean, the original fairy tales were nothing like that, really. They were quite gruesome. The Grimm's fairy tales and things like that, but Disney has kind of sanitized them a bit. But you do have that basic theme of distress rescuer. You've got all the dynamics of like the wicked stepmother, the ugly sister. Cinderella has so many elements in it. The neglected, abused child, the grief of losing her parents, the cruelty. You've got trauma work comes through there. Cinderella gets chosen quite a lot. You have the longing for rescue, you have the pining, the broken heart, and so on. And then you have the good ending. And within Cinderella, you've got the stroke of midnight at the ball is another thing before we get to the good ending, where she suddenly realizes she'll be exposed as a fraud. And so you have shame and self-concept, imposter syndrome, so many parallels, not just to life itself, but to our counselling world. And often Cinderella does get chosen. And then, of course, you do have the shoe fits, the finding the right solution. And so on. Does that help a bit in seeing how full of imagery and metaphor as one fairy tale is?
Yes, the archetypes.
The archetypes are all there. That's right.
Archetypes are all there. And I guess in a way with fairy tales, you can play with endings as well, because I mean, well, not all fairy tales have got a happy ending.
Absolutely true. And I remember once doing a fairy tale in a sand tray. I was doing a sand tray training day and putting the figures there. And one of my students on the training course, she'd chosen something to represent the tower, the princess in the tower. And the princess had come out of the tower and she was saying, I don't need any prince. I'm doing this myself. I am a self-motivated, high-functioning princess. And as you say, you rewrite the ending. It's a bit like when you work with a dream, you can ask the client, what is your ending? Carry on writing your ending. And you can make anything happen in this glorious world of creativity.
Yeah, so it's not just a case of mapping your life onto the template of the fairy tale, but you can actually fiddle around with that fairy tale, mold it into what you want it to be.
Yes, that's right.
Life.
And I remember one person I worked with, she's actually done a video for me on this, where she was looking at the she'd drawn a picture, because I work very much with find the scene of the fairy tale and then draw it. And she had drawn a picture. I'm going back to Cinderella again, just because it's an easy example. She had drawn the steps leading up to the exit door and the shoes that were dancing. And we were looking together at what is a place of growth and what is a place of, sorry, my arm should be gone a different way. The place of growth was in dancing, and the place of safety was in going back to the familiar, which would have been the poverty script and perhaps even a victim script or something like that. Is it for growth or is it for freedom? And we can work with lifestyle choices and all kinds of things. I remember once also, I was actually being a student on a course where someone else was doing the fairy tale thing, one of our team, and I decided to do my own drawing as well. And it was Jack and the Beanstalk, and the beanstalk was really tall, but the roots were very small. And I knew that this was a picture of where my company Deep Release was at the time, because we'd outgrown our strength. And so the fairy tale can speak right into your own life, and thinking, I need to broaden the team. I need to get more people involved. Otherwise, this is unstable.
So it can make you realize things that you weren't already aware of just by looking at the way you've drawn your fairy tale.
It speaks to you. It helps you look at the different, what is holding you back, what is helping you grow, as I've just described. And it can just really give you those light bulb moments that, oh my gosh, I don't need to be here. I can be there. Or this is what my conflict is. So many of the fairy tales are about conflict. And most pathology, psychopathology of the client is to some degree, frequently anyway, about conflict. So part of me wants to do this and part of me wants to do that. My wicked witch wants to keep me in the tower. My handsome prince wants to liberate me and send me off. Does that make
So
sense?
you can look at all those characters and see all the characters in the fairy tales as facets of yourself rather than.
Well, that's right, because we're looking at a very common theme for counsellors, which is the person-centered configurations of self, all the different me's there are, as I've just described. You've got transactional analysis with the parent, the adult, and the child. You've got Gestalt that says the whole is greater than the sum of the parts of us. And the fairy tales can represent in an archetypal way the different parts of me. And that's what I find so exciting. And actually, sometimes I get challenged saying, oh, kids don't know fairy tales anymore. But I tested it out with my grandsons and daughters, who are aged between 18 and 10 at the time. They all knew the fairy tales. They all knew the standard, Sleeping Beauty, Jack and the Beanstalk, Goldilocks, all of them. They knew them, Cinderella, Snow White, all of them. But you can actually, as a counsellor, we can also work with the Marvel characters or films or even books. But I think fairy tales have a unique offering in that they do highlight specific types, archetypes that we all relate to with a little bit of gentle guidance.
And what's nice about fairy tales is they're so clutter-free, aren't they? It's the basic bones of a story, and that can really help you in a way to declutter your, I guess, your perception of yourself or your situation, and so that you're able, you're able to see the wood in spite of the trees.
Little Red Riding Hood might be in it and a wolf, but yes, you can definitely see that. And I absolutely agree with you. I think they have so much to offer, so much to offer.
Yeah. And I wonder, are there certain situations in which fairy tales are more helpful as a therapeutic tool than others? Saying, clients who present with certain things.
I wouldn't say that they match particularly to certain situations. I think they are generally good for all clients. I have tended to go for a fairy tale quite early on. I like to know what my client's basic core script and self-image is, and I find the fairy tale takes me straight there. And their core, not only what they're presenting, but their life message. And when I've got that, I've worked with every kind of client with fairy tales, including extreme trauma. And to do what is your fairy tale today is also a good thing to ask, because if they like drawing, if they like getting in touch with it, I mean, how clients respond to working creatively, such as drawing a picture, is a whole other discussion, really. But once they get the idea and realize stick figures can be just as good as anything that they might have in their head, just reproduce it very simply, and then give speech bubbles. What's the dialogue? What's the dialogue going on between the different parts? What is Cinderella saying to the wicked stepmother? What is the wicked stepmother saying to her? Where is that negative inner critic? Who is my inner critic? And just by recreating or creating a picture of what they're seeing, we simplify it, as you said. It's the core script. And if you choose the scene to draw, it leads to so many good things.
Mm.
And
I mean, what I found really helpful in when drawing them out is asking that question, what does Cinderella need?
oh,
You know,
yeah,
at this,
absolutely.
I found that such a crucial question.
And there in the drawing, you can do all sorts of things. I've had clients who've torn off a part of the picture that they didn't want that in their life anymore, symbolically. It's not magic, but symbolically, I'm seeing now this is not a place for growth. I want to get rid of it, and changing the dynamics. And as counselors, we notice. I realize you haven't put the fairy godmother in at all. Any reason for that? And they think, oh, forgot all about her. But she wasn't relevant today. It wasn't about her. Actually, very often the fairy godmother is a very good representative of who the representation of the counsellor. So with our magic wand to make everything better.
Mhm.
But
So looking at what's missing is really important.
working out what's missing, what they haven't included, offstage characters. But that's why when you narrow it down to the scene, simplify it even further, make it crystallize the energy of the fairy tale by going to the scene and drawing that, and then working with it, adding things to it. As you say, what does Cinderella need? Because that is a reflection of when I'm in that place, when I'm sitting feeling abandoned, unloved, hopeless. What do I need? Let's draw it in the picture. And that it has limitless possibilities.
Hmm. And what is so interesting is that sometimes people find it so much easier to say, what does Cinderella need than what do I need?
That is brilliant. Yes, I'm glad you raised that because we're putting it out there rather than me having to tell you and describe and have a clear narrative. This is my problem. This is what I'm feeling. When I draw Cinderella, I project onto her and her needs and what she needs. And it's so much easier than talking about yourself. It really,
I guess because people can clam up sometimes.
well, they don't know what the words are. And,
Mm.
we have that wonderful word, alexithymic, which is a no, lexi word, thymic, feelings. I have no word for my feelings. And the people just don't know how to describe what the feelings are.
Mm.
The fairy tale is telling your story as well as its own story.
But it takes the pressure off somehow. Something
Absolutely.
about it that takes the pressure off.
It's like sometimes when I'm working with a client and they have something difficult to tell me, I might say, where is little Hannah right now? Where she's in the house, what's she doing? I'm putting it out there. It works very well with working with the child self, but with any part of it, tell me what she is doing. Putting it into the third person is just like drawing the fairy tale. They push it out there a bit from the emotional content and release the client, as you say, exactly like you say, of not having to find clever words that describe it.
Mm. Yeah, so
And
it's
also, sorry to interrupt you, but also, if you don't have the same language or the same culture, the fairy tales work brilliantly. You just work with the folklore of the other nationality or the other culture. It's only the picture that matters in the end, but that they can draw it when words are not just difficult to find, but they're impossible because you speak a poor level of English, maybe.
exactly, and it can
That's
it can
far
allow
reach.
you to articulate yourself
That's
so
it.
much more easily
Yeah, yeah.
than having to do it just through words, through language.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people work with teenagers and young people, and, to be able to encourage them to draw a story that they know. Winnie the Pooh is quite an interesting as one. It's not as well.
Who are the characters? Who are
Yeah,
the,
you've got Tigger and you've got Eeyore and you've got Roo and you've got Winnie, and, just the idea is great to work with.
and as you said, it can be so it leads to so many insights when you ask, what do you want to do with this picture? Do you want to tear off a corner of it? Do you want to keep it? Do you want me to keep, like, what do you want to do with this picture once it's finished? Yeah.
And I always, with permission, take a photo and date when we looked at it, because often we'd go back to that and think about, oh, do you remember when we did Goldilocks? And I remember I had one client who did Goldilocks, and she drew herself screamingly angry because the stupid chair had broken and she was going to get told off for it. And it was all these sort of messages screaming out, and she just exploded her anger through Goldilocks on a chair. And it was just brilliant because she got in touch with anger that way that would have been harder on her own.
Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, because I know you work, I mean, it is what you do, working with creative interventions. And I wonder, I don't know, how do I put this? Like, is it something that works best when integrated with other approaches? Or can you really just go for it with the creative interventions? How far can it take you as an approach in its own
For
right?
me, I've got this little metaphor that talkie therapy, where the client is often quite defended, is a bit like us knocking at the front door to try and get in and get past the bolts and the barbed wire to get through. Whereas, meanwhile, creative therapy nips in through the back window when no one's looking, and where the front door is the frontal cortex of the brain, highly defended usually. The creative therapy jumps through the back window, goes straight for the limbic system, and the emotions are there. And I don't think you have to have a particular form of therapy. The only model of therapy, I would say, or approach, person-centered therapists might be reluctant to direct their client in any particular way. Although if the client came in and said, I want to do a fairy tale, I fully imagine they would let them do it. But with all kinds of models and approaches, I think fairy tales sit very nicely. In fact, creative therapy itself, I would suggest, sits pretty well with every mode. Was that addressing what you said?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I could go on about carry on asking questions for a while, but this just these last 10 minutes have been fascinating, and thank you so much for talking to me about and just giving me a little kind of taster menu of what creative therapies can do for people.
You're so welcome, Hannah. That's absolutely.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of the same, then feel free to subscribe to our podcast or visit our YouTube channel at Kent House Counselling.